Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Nittai Go, Hare Bo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nittai Go, Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo, Shishi, Radha, Gokulanandi Ki Jai, Shishi, Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So, okay, thank you. It's certainly my great honor and privilege to be able to sit amongst you today here at Bhaktivedanta Manor and be able to talk a little bit about Srila Prabhupada, especially on the day that we're celebrating the anniversary. Oh, look, it's got my computer. Celebrating the anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's arrival in America. So I'm feeling somewhat unqualified to make a presentation. I was told to present on. Here, let me put this up for now. I was told to make a presentation on Prabhupada on the Jala Dut. And that's interesting because there's so much that can be said actually on this topic. And there'll be another class tomorrow, and there's going to be presentations today and tomorrow. I have no idea who's going to say what. So I made a little presentation, though, about Prabhupada coming to America and some of those early days of the Hare Krishna movement in America and what it means for us now. I mean, it was so long ago, yet we're still enjoying the benefits of Prabhupada's very quick success in America. I'm going to be talking a little bit from this book. Has anyone ever seen this book, The Hare Krishna Explosion? This is an older book. It's not so well known nowadays. It was published back in 1985. Shama Sundar's books actually have kind of like replaced it in terms of being more thorough in their presentation. But the title, The Birth of Krishna Consciousness in America, 1966-1969, The Hare Krishna Explosion. It's very fascinating, actually. This is going to be the real topic of what I'm going to be talking about today. How was it the Hare Krishna movement exploded in America? What does that mean? It was actually a spiritual atomic bomb that went off in those first early days, and we're still feeling the ramifications even today of what happened. Okay, so I'm going to take this off. I'm going to be showing you a few slides later, but I have some thoughts to present. I'm going to be using, to begin with, a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto, 4th chapter, text 63. I'll just chant it and give the translation and purport, and then I'll speak from there about what I'm going to be speaking about in terms of my presentation for Prabhupada on the Jala Dut and what it means to us. So the verse is, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Aham Bhakta Paradino, Yashvad tantra iva dvija sadhur bir grasta hridayo bhaktar bhakta jana priya. Translation is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahmana, Durvasa Muni, he's speaking, this is the Brahmana being referred to as Durvasa Muni. And it's in the story of Durvasa Muni cursing Ambarish Maharaj. So Krishna, he's saying to Durvasa Muni, the Brahman Durvasa Muni, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent, because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires. I sit only within the cores of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. And Prabhupada gives a very nice purport. All the great stalwart personalities in the universe, including Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, are fully under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fully under the control of his devotee. Why is this? Because the devotee is anyabhila shita shunyam. In other words, he has no material desires in his heart. His only desire is to think always of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how to serve him best. Because of this transcendental qualification, the Supreme Lord is extremely favorable to the devotees. Indeed, not only the devotees, but also the devotees of the devotees. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Charya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Payecha Keva. Without being a devotee of a devotee, one cannot be released from material entanglement. Therefore, Caitanya Mahaprabhu identified himself as Gopi Bhartu Padakamalayur Dasa Das Anudas. Thus, he instructed us to become not directly servants of Krishna, but servants of the servant of Krishna. Devotees like Brahma, Narada, Vyasadeva, and Shukadeva Goswami are directly servants of Krishna. And one who becomes a servant of Narada, Vyasadeva, and Shukadeva, like the 6 Goswamis, is still more devoted. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur therefore says, Yasha prasada bhagavat prasada. If one very sincerely serves the spiritual master, Krishna certainly becomes favorable to such a devotee. Following the instructions of a devotee is more valuable than following the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. End of the purport. So, today is marking the anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's arrival in Boston Harbor. And there's a famous prayer, Markandeya Bhagavat Dharma, that was written on the Jaladut, either on that day or shortly afterwards. I'm not going to go over the whole prayer. I hope during this festival time someone's going to be going over it. It's filled with tremendous insights and nectar about who Srila Prabhupada is and his consciousness in arriving in America on the order of his spiritual master. I'm just going to quote one famous line that we've all heard before. The English is, "O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So, if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance, O Lord, make me dance as you like." So, just as Prabhupada was dancing to the master puppeteer, Krishna, and Lord Caitanya, coming to America to spread Krishna consciousness, he also, by the power of his devotion, by the power of his prema bhakti to Lord Caitanya, Radha, and Krishna, was mystically also controlling the Supreme Lord. So this is actually the nature of pure devotional service or Vraj Bhakti. There's a reciprocation between Krishna and the pure devotee such that Krishna is obliged serving his pure devotee, and of course the pure devotee is naturally serving Krishna. There's a give and a take. This is a whole topic actually of Bhagavatam, Krishna and the nature of his reciprocations with his devotee. So that nature is one of love, divine love. It's a sacred love. It's a transcendental love. It's not a love of this material world. When we talk about love, of course, it's basically referring to trying to satisfy our senses, lust. But this pure transcendental love is the reciprocation between the Lord and his pure devotee. So I'm going to try and elaborate a little bit on this esoteric topic in this class, specifically, and how Krishna reciprocated with Prabhupada when he came to America. So yes, Krishna consciousness is about this divine love. We're trying to dive into an ever-deepening love. There are, basically within the Sanatana Dharma traditions, there are 4 basic goals of life: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. But for the devotee of Krishna, yes, those goals of life are there, but the real supreme goal is the 5th Purushartha, and that's Prem Bhakti. So Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, but we're not trying to achieve moksha, we're trying to achieve Prem Bhakti. This is our goal. We have to actually have that within our frame of consciousness when we're practicing our devotional sadhana, when we're doing our services. What is the goal? So the followers of Sanatana Dharma, I don't like to use the H word, Hindu, so much. It kind of has this negative connotation. I call it the H word. But we're followers of Sanatana Dharma. We have to be clear in terms of Caitanya Vaishnavism, what we're trying to achieve. Not exactly like the other practitioners of Sanatana Dharma. So this is Mahaprabhu's gift to the world, is Prem Bhakti. This is our goal. And for an exalted Uttama Adhikari, Mahabhagavata, even Shaktivesh avatar, empowered devotee like Srila Prabhupada, obviously the Lord was obliged to serve him. Now this term Shaktivesh avatar, that's something that came into our awareness and consciousness after Prabhupada left us from one of his godbrothers, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. He was explaining actually that Prabhupada fits this category of Shaktivesh avatar, meaning he's Jiva Tattva. He's not Krishna. Sometimes in Indian traditions we have this idea of the God-man who obtain some kind of elevated enlightenment where they actually become God. That's exactly opposite of Krishna consciousness. So this term Shaktivesh avatar, what does it mean? It means that the Shakti, ultimately Haladini Shakti, Srimati Radharani, is empowering these special souls for a specific mission, for a specific purpose within the confines of the Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada's very specific empowerment was to come to the West, to translate books for the Western mind, to preach Krishna consciousness to the Western mindset. This actually, Bhaktisiddhanta told him this in the very beginning, when he first met Prabhupada, that you're an educated man, we speak English nicely, now your duties, you should immediately be thinking about how to travel to the West. So how is this accomplished? You know, Prabhupada, ultimately we have to understand what it was that was motivating Prabhupada. It was his love for his Guru Maharaj, his love for Vrindavan, his love for Radha and Krishna. That was the source of his empowerment. And ultimately, this is, like I keep coming back to this point, this is the ultimate expression of what the Hare Krishna movement is all about. It's what the Bhagavatam is all about. I've got a few books here just to use for example. The Dance of Divine, the Dance of Divine Love. Okay, this is a book written by my godbrother. It's not very popular amongst the devotees. I'm kind of like showing it off here today. It's kind of an expensive book. It's a hardcover book, and you usually don't see it. But it's actually about the essence of the Bhagavatam, which is contained within the 10th canto, within the 5 chapters on Rasa Leela. So the subtitle is India's Classic Sacred Love Story, the Rasa Leela of Krishna. So again, this is the dance of divine love, sacred love. This is the motivating power that brought Prabhupada to America. How was he going to spread Krishna consciousness, though, to the Americans who are full of the lower modes, who are completely unable to initially grasp these concepts that we've, in modern day ISKCON, we've become very familiar with them. But we should understand what Prabhupada was giving was this highest conceptualization of theology, of this dance of divine love. There's another book by my godbrother, Ranchero Prime, Eternal Dance of Love. Another book, not always read by the devotees. I feel this is a very underrated book. This is an old copy, Teachings of Lord Caitanya. Now, Teachings of Lord Caitanya is fantastic. It was actually first published in 1968, very shortly after Prabhupada came. This particular copy is 1968. It's not Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust didn't even exist then. It was published by ISKCON Press. But on the back, there's a whole nice blurb here, but on the top, an ocean of love. An ocean of love. So these books are capitalizing on this idea that what the Krishna consciousness movement is all about. So practically, we can see and understand the dance of love by understanding that Srila Prabhupada even got on the Jaladut. This is part of his dance of love with his spiritual master and with Krishna. He was completely dependent on the mercy, the grace of the Lord, not knowing actually what the future would hold. And of course, we call him Abhaya, fearless. This is Prabhupada's true quality as a fearless preacher, to get on that Jaladut, not knowing. But Krishna knew. Krishna knew. Krishna knew what was going to happen. Krishna is Trikalagya. He knows past, present, and future. So in his dance with Prabhupada and Prabhupada's dance with Krishna, Prabhupada had full faith in his guru, full faith in the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, but he didn't know what was going to happen. Krishna knew. And Prabhupada made a conscious choice to come to America. Come to America. And we can't really speculate on this, but how is it Prabhupada made that choice to come to America rather than coming to England? In one sense, it would seem like that would be the logical choice. This is where Bhaktisiddhanta sent his disciples to come preach, come to London. But Prabhupada somehow or other made a choice. No, okay, I'm not going to go to London. We don't understand what those dynamics were, but somehow or other, certainly Super Soul was instructing Prabhupada, go to America. Go to America. If you go to America, that's where it's going to happen. And it did happen. And the point I'm going to be making today over and over again, the timing was perfect. You couldn't have made a better timing for the Hare Krishna explosion to happen than the way it happened. Why? Because in America, There was a subculture that was brewing. The counterculture was just waiting for someone like Prabhupada to come and actually guide them in terms of what it was they were looking for. There were many youthful, soon-to-be devotees of Krishna waiting in America, waiting for a guru to actually guide them. So wherever the pure devotee travels, he brings Krishna with him. Krishna's within his heart. He brings Vrindavan consciousness with him. He ultimately is bringing Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada came to America. Initially, Radha and Krishna didn't manifest. Radha and Krishna manifest here in London. First of all, Radha Landanishwar, some few years later, Radha Gokulananda. But wherever Prabhupada ultimately went, he was bringing with him this focus of our devotion, Radha and Krishna. And again, Radha and Krishna, it's all about the exchange of divine love between Radha and Krishna. Now, Radha Gokulananda are on the altar. They're looking out at us. Gokulananda is playing his flute. That's an invitation for all of us to enter into this dance of divine love. He's inviting us. Do we hear his flute call? When we see the deity, we're actually understanding. Darshan is being given to us so that we can enter into their dance of divine love. Sometimes you see pictures of Radha and Krishna, and they're having darshan of each other. You ever seen that? They're looking at each other. That expression of Radha and Krishna is actually an expression of Rasa Lila. That's what's going on in Rasa Lila, Radha and Krishna. But for the deities, they're looking at us. So when we have darshan of the deities, we should take it very seriously, trying to enter into that mood of Krishna's inviting me, and I'm reciprocating with that invitation by chanting Hare Krishna, by serving them, by entering into their loving reciprocation. That's our reciprocation to their invitation. So the historical timing was perfect. Prabhupada didn't have much time. If he had come a little sooner or if he had come a little later, the social situation in America would have been actually quite a bit different. But he came in 1965, 1966. The Hare Krishna movement took birth in New York. It took root in New York. But then, what happened? And again, Prabhupada didn't quite know what was happening. He was just being that puppet. Krishna was pulling the strings. But something very special happened in January of 1967. A plane ticket was sent to Prabhupada in New York by Mukunda and his wife, Janaki. Oh, we've got a storefront in San Francisco. And Prabhupada said, I have to go immediately. And the devotees in New York were like, wait a second, I thought Krishna consciousness was a New York thing. Yes, he started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but the devotees in New York didn't really understand what Prabhupada was trying to do. New York was the starting point. It was the point of entrance, the birth of the Hare Krishna movement, the birth of ISKCON. But when that plane ticket arrived, then things really started to happen. That's when, as I'm going to be describing, the Hare Krishna explosion took root in New York, birth in New York. But then Prabhupada got on an airplane. For the first time in his life, he got on an airplane, New York City, to San Francisco. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. He gets on a plane, arrives in San Francisco, and again, he didn't know what to expect. There were 50 hippies waiting for him. Allen Ginsberg chanting Hare Krishna. It was an exuberant, joyous celebration of the Guru coming, the Hare Krishna Guru coming into San Francisco. So what was happening in San Francisco? That's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. This is an important American history. This is not British history. I don't know how much people here in London know about it. I'm an American. I'm going to talk about a little bit about American history. What was going on in San Francisco? Because that's where the atomic bomb went off, the spiritual atomic bomb. And that fallout of that spiritual atomic bomb, we're still feeling that all over the world. So this is the subject of today. Bear with me a little bit. I'm going to be going into a little bit of American history. This is all arranged by Krishna. You may not be able to immediately see the connection, but bear with me on this. So Prabhupada flew in to San Francisco January 17, 1967. This was 3 days right after a very powerful event, historical event. You can look it up on the internet. It was called the First Human Being. First Human Being occurred in San Francisco, January 14th, 1967. So what is this human being? What's going on with this human being? Why do I want to talk about that? I'm going to be making the point, it was this human being that actually was a catalyst, a necessary catalyst for what was to follow that summer, the summer of love. Now, how many times have any of us experienced the summer of love? Doesn't happen. You summer of love? Where?
There's one in 1988.
Where?
Called the Second Summer of Love, 1988.
The summer of love?
The second.
What happened then? I don't know about that. Because when I say summer of love, there's only one summer of love. 1967, San Francisco, summer of love. It's historically understood that that's where it was happening. And maybe other summer of loves were trying to repeat that kind of experience. But it's very hard to repeat that. You can't actually repeat it because of the different elements that were coming together. So, just to give a little preface of what the human being was about, it was a few months earlier, October 1966, it was kind of like a testing point for the human being in San Francisco. Now, and I don't know if any of you have been to San Francisco, there's a huge park, Golden Gate Park, and there's like what they call the panhandle of Golden Gate Park. Sticks out, looks like a handle to a pan. So in the panhandle of Golden Gate Park, they had a big celebration on October 6, 1966. Now, what was happening October 6, 1966? That's the day in California that LSD was criminalized. Before that, it was legal. You could actually take such a drug legally. So on that day, October 6, 1966, it was criminalized in California. A few years later, it was criminalized all over America. But why would the hippies have a celebration for the criminalization? They took it as a sign because October 6, 1966, 666, this is the establishment. This is what they're doing to us. It's the beast. It's the devil trying to constrain our awakening consciousness. So they took it as a celebration. They had a big festival. Some San Francisco rock groups played for free, and 3,000 people showed up. It was like, wow, 3,000 people. That's like a big festival. It's like significant. That set the stage. So the hippie, there were actually hippie managers, so to speak, or leaders at that time, and they started thinking, we got to do this on a big scale. So they consulted an astrologer, they started figuring out how to do this, and so January 14th, 1967 was set as a date to do this by an astrologer. And they organized it in such a way where it would actually be an imitation of the Kumbh Mela. Here, I'm going to bring up another slide. So we know the Kumbh Mela. Oops, not this one. The Kumbh Mela in India is a big, huge, gigantic gathering. So that's what they wanted to do. Here are two posters used to advertise this. Now we see here on the left side, it's called Saturday, January 14th. It's a gathering in a specific place in San Francisco, the Polo Field in Golden Gate Park. The Polo Field is like this beautiful amphitheater open area surrounded by natural woods away from the city. And they used this poster. Basically it's a photograph of a Shaivite with an artistic overlaying of an enlightened third eye to advertise, come for the human being. Okay, so this was advertised in the hippie underground papers in Berkeley as well as San Francisco. But what happened was, beyond everyone's conception, it was a huge success, this human being. Not 3,000 people, 30,000 people came to this gathering. And what was it for? It was just basically people coming together to be a human being, to witness the growing revolution of awakening and consciousness development that was happening in the San Francisco area. So that day, January 14th, in San Francisco, sometimes it's strange. The winters can be like summers, and the summers can be like winters. So January 14th, 1967, by Krishna's arrangement, it was a warm, sunny day in January. People came out. There was no permit. It was not even officially registered with the city that we're going to have a gathering. The police didn't show up. They didn't even know what was happening. There was no security other than the Hells Angels. I don't know if people know what the Hells Angels are. Hells Angel, it's a motorcycle gang in San Francisco. They're the big tough guys. So they were the security guards. But there was no policeman. The Hells Angel, 30,000 people. This is a huge gathering. Police didn't know about it. They did, actually, the organizers, by chance, they organized that there was a favorable lawyer in San Francisco and to the hippie cause, and he submitted, with the help of the hippies, an application for a celebration of his birthday in the park. So if any authorities were to come, they said, oh, this is a gathering for a celebration of a birthday. But other than that, it was completely illegal. No one knew about it, no police, but it happened. And the mood was this spiritual optimism, youthful, utopian optimism, that these people that had gathered were on the cusp of some kind of new awakening. Something was beginning to blossom, a new experience, new genuine spirituality. Spiritual culture was happening there, and San Francisco was at the very center. It was the mandala center. So they were euphoric. Yes, many of them were intoxicated. I'm not trying to advocate for that at all. But even without that, there was a kind of a sense of divine intoxication going on. Why? Because it's San Francisco, named after St. Francis, this mystic Christian monk, and they knew something was happening. They knew something had happened. So it was very joyful, it was lighthearted, The success far exceeded everyone's expectations. There were, Allen Ginsberg was there chanting mantras. There was, everything was like, there wasn't like a big, theater or a stage. They had a flatbed truck. That was the stage, just the truck. That was when Timothy Leary, who was the Harvard professor, got up in front of this big crowd, and he gave this mantra for a generation. Maybe some of you have heard of it. Turn on, tune in, drop out. So turn on. What were they turning on to? They're turning on to this new awareness that was happening. Of course, many of them were turning on to hallucinogenics. Turn on, tune in to the changes, like a call for meditation. And drop out. Drop out of what? Drop out of the secular society. So that was happening. And sometimes it's described that actually devotees, especially the early devotees, they became double dropouts. Many of them were part of the counterculture, hippie generation. They dropped out of secular society to become devotees. Then they had to drop out of hippie culture. They dropped out of secular society to become hippies. Then they had to drop out of hippie culture in order to become devotees. It's kind of like a double dropout. Anyway, that was going on then. I don't think that's necessarily the what's going on in modern times. But my point is, there was an absolute necessity for this human being to occur. Why did it? Why am I saying that? Because the people that went away, they were euphoric. They felt like they were initiated into a new religion. They were apostles to a new age of Aquarius. Something was happening. They all went away feeling like joyous. 3 days later, Prabhupada flies in. This is the height of the hippie experience. And 3 days later, the guru of Lord Caitanya, the tradition of divine sacred love, came in to teach the hippies about spiritual love. What happened in America is the media started saying, hey, what's going on in San Francisco? They just pulled off this huge gathering, and it was like, everyone's talking about it. And so major publications, Time and Life and other magazines and newspapers, they started publishing articles about the hippie generation, what's going on, and the be-in. It was the necessary catalyst for the summer of love. What happened, because of all this attention by the media, young people all over America say, hey, I'm going to San Francisco. And there was this huge influx, migration of young people to San Francisco from all over America. This little neighborhood in San Francisco called the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood, also, during the spring and summer, it became inundated with what some people say is like 100,000 young people. Now, that's the summer of love, historically. It quickly degenerated because of the degradation, the hedonism. Even George Harrison and his wife actually went to the Haight-Ashbury that summer to see what was happening. But this is what Prabhupada walked into. It was this summer of love experience. This allowed Prabhupada allowed the devotees in that little storefront to feed the hippies, to preach, to ultimately install Jagannath, Balaram, Subhadra, the first deities in the Hare Krishna movement, carved by Shyama-Sundar. The first Rath Yatra was in that summer of love. Again, very simple. They had a flatbed truck, and they were, that history is all there by Shyama-Sundar. But my point is, This was all Lord Chaitanya's arrangement. That the ocean of divine love of Lord Chaitanya, of Radha and Krishna, of Krishna conscious, Prem Bhakti, Vraj Bhakti, started in, or exploded in that summer of love. So that I'm thinking about, it's like, okay, well, historically, it's been over 50 years, but we should appreciate this wasn't Prabhupada's plan, this was Krishna's plan. Krishna was simply reciprocating with his pure devotee, that in order for him to be successful, coming to America and coming on the Jaladut at an elderly age, things had to happen quickly. If it didn't happen quickly, how was he going to be able, in a short amount of time, preach the Hare Krishna, establish the ISKCON society all over America? But that's exactly what happened. Within 10 years, Prabhupada was riding down on a Roth cart, Fifth Avenue, New York City, 1976, Rath Yatra. Prabhupada was triumphant. 10 years after establishing ISKCON in 1966, 1976, he was there, 3 gigantic carts, fabulous Rath Yatra festival, 1976. So that's exactly what happened. Because of Krishna's arrangement with these cultural settings, because of the success of the Bian, because of the media attention on what happened and the euphoria, yes, it was naive, yes, it was utopian, but actually it was a necessary cultural phenomenon that cannot really ever be repeated. That spring, the hippie leaders, they got together and they formed what they called the Council for a Summer of Love. That's where the Summer of Love started to come into context. They actually got together and in front of journalists started talking about, look, this is what's happening. People are coming to San Francisco. So they established a council for the coming Summer of Love. And they said, I'm quoting here, "We believe that Haight-Ashbury is the focus of a universal spiritual awakening. The Summer of Love is an expression of this awakening. We call upon the world to celebrate the infinite holiness of life." This is where Prabhupada's movement, it was like a nuclear bomb going off. And from that nuclear bomb, those 3 householder couples came to London, brought Krishna consciousness to London. Krishna consciousness movement spread all over America. So from the Summer of Love, this is where it all happened. Of course, it was a unique phenomenon, but it ultimately failed because, as I was saying, it brought in all kinds of negative elements too. The hedonism, other drugs came into that neighborhood, and things quickly degraded. But the Hare Krishna movement was there, is established to minister to the people that were there, and still people come. If many people, even today, they go to San Francisco and they try and re-experience what was that Summer of Love. They go to the Haight-Ashbury. Of course, they can't experience it. It's gone. But I personally believe it's important that devotees have some appreciation of these humble beginnings. We, of course, have those memoirs of the devotees that lived through it. That this was Krishna's arrangement, coming on the Jaladut, perfect timing to establish the Hare Krishna movement in New York, get that ticket to fly to San Francisco 3 days after the BN, which was the apex, the ultimate experience of the counterculture. And of course then 2 weeks later, again Krishna's arrangement, Prabhupada was introduced to the hippie culture at the Monte Rock Dance. That's all been written about. 2,000 hippies. Allen Ginsberg, he was introduced to so it was like, Who could have planned it out? If he tried to write out a script for the spreading of the Hare Krishna movement, you could never conceive of it. But this was Krishna's script. This was Lord Chaitanya's script. And we should feel proud of it. It's not like, oh, sometimes I think the devotees think, oh, we came out of hippies or hippiedom, and that's somehow or other a negative thing. No, actually, we should see it as a positive thing. This is the summer of love. And this is ultimately what everyone here is experiencing in London, here at Bhaktivedanta Manor. We should embrace it. This is our philosophy. Primanjanan charita bhakti velochinena santasadhaiva hridayesha velokyanti yang shama sundaram achinta guna swarupam govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda. I worship Radha Gokulananda, the primeval Lord, who is Sham Sundar, Krishna himself, playing his flute, endowed with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their hearts of hearts, with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So it was the summer of love that produced that ointment that we're all trying to experience in our practicing of Krishna consciousness. So, in conclusion, I mean, we all have to see ultimately Krishna's hand in our own lives. Obviously, when we read Lilamrita, we read these stories, we understand a little bit about Prabhupada. It's an amazing story. But ultimately, we're all trying to see Krishna in our own lives. As we're trying to reciprocate with Krishna, Krishna is reciprocating with us. And pure Krishna consciousness will see that reciprocation happening not every once in a while, but every moment, every day by day, we'll see Krishna's reciprocation with us. And that's, here, I'm just going to show you some of these here, the ocean of love. Hare Krishna explosion. The dance of divine love, India's classic sacred love story, the Rasa Leela of Krishna. Eternal dance of love. He showed us the power of divine love. This is about Lord Caitanya, beautiful book by Ranchor Prabhu. So I'll conclude there. This is ultimately what drove Prabhupada to get on the Jaladut, what kept him going through all the difficulties he experienced on the Jaladut and when he came to America. It wasn't easy, extreme difficulties he went through. But it was this initial powerful jolt in the beginning that kept Prabhupada going also, I'm convinced, that he saw Krishna was making these arrangements so that the Hare Krishna movement would become firmly established and explode around the world. He was simply the puppet following the puppet master. So Hare Krishna. Maybe if there's any questions, comments, thoughts on these topics.
Could we ask, did you go to the summer of love of the human being?
No, I was 13 years old. I knew about it. These things were part of American culture. I did not go. But when Krishna consciousness came my way, and I started understanding, oh, this is ultimately what the hippies were all talking about. This is what they were, this utopian search for a new way of life, a new consciousness, a new understanding of love. This is what they were talking about. Ultimately, is what Prabhupada was saying. So I recognized that. Of course, in those days, too, George Harrison had a powerful influence with his songs. But yeah. Yes, Govinda.
Thank you for your original presentation. My question is this. Hundreds, almost probably hundreds of thousands of hippies. The Hare Krishna movement, very small, but was it fair to say that a huge number of hippies kind of resonated with the Hare Krishnas, and a very small amount of them actually joined. Is that kind of how we would look at it? Because it seems that our movement at that time was very small, but it seemed to be very big amongst the hippies. So they were kind of taking it kind of a little bit, and then, but not really taking it seriously. Is that the way you'd look at it?
Many did not take it seriously, of course. I mean, Krishna consciousness is a serious commitment. And the hippies were basically thriving on a hedonistic ideals. And Krishna consciousness was 180 degrees opposite. So, many hippies came. Certainly the zeitgeist of the time also was the LSD culture, hallucinogens. And again, somehow or other, I think this was Krishna's arrangement to open up people's awareness to the understanding of these Krishna consciousness ideas that were being presented in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm not advocating for it at all, but it was part of the zeitgeist of that time, and I think it did actually help bring people to Prabhupada. But again, how many people actually, are still practicing Krishna consciousness today out of all those hippies that initially came? Actually, not so many. Many of them fell along the path, so to speak. Yes.
Thank you. A separate question, which is I find quite challenging, is now you mentioned Rancho Prime. You've mentioned him in your presentation. So in a podcast with Swami, he experienced. I think he went to the forest and he took something. I can't remember if it was LSD or mushrooms.
Say it again. Say it louder, please.
LSD. Okay. So Rancho Prime.
Yes.
So
I have his book up here.
He experienced God, right? His experience of God was, in his perception, taking LSD. And if you look at research, people who take LSD or even other stuff, it turns atheists into theists. So it seems like it's a stepping stone to spirituality, but at the same time, we're not going to promote this at all, and it's a problem because it seems to work, but we're against it, and it's how to.
Hey man, it's all one and it's all beautiful. You just got to merge into the love. Of course, this is Mayavad. This is all Mayavad. But yeah, it was a kind of a catalyst for Krishna Bhakti to take root. Again, I'm not advocating at all for these kind of things, but yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to support that. They're actually called entheogens. So if anybody's hip to Greek at all, then entheogen. So theism, theo. So it means brings God within.
Yeah. For many decades, no one was doing research with hallucinogens, but actually in the past 10 years, there has been research done for like post-traumatic stress syndrome and different things. It relaxes people, relieves anxiety to some degree. But this spiritual consciousness of unity, some of these hallucinations would bring that awareness that actually we're all part of one living source. They didn't understand what that source is. We understand it's Krishna. But and the best way they could relate to it was an impersonal source. But yeah, it was part of the catalyst of that explosion. You can't deny it. Not all the devotees took it. Jayananda never took it, the great saint. He never took it. He was like a straight cab driver. But certainly many of the devotees that were there in those initial days serving Prabhupada, it was part of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes Brahman Realization is looked down upon, but actually Brahman
Brahman realization is a bona fide level of God consciousness. We don't focus on it, or because Brahman realization comes automatically as you're engaging in bhakti. You see the connectedness, you see the unity, you understand that Brahman is ultimately a person. The Supreme Brahman is Vishnu, dwelling within our hearts, dwelling within every atom. So that kind of perception starts to develop, and you see Brahman realization not as impersonal, but as personal. So yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to connect all these what happened, in the festivals and the actions that were happening at that time. The hippies using these hallucinogens, and I also have had stories of some of the devotees, of some of my friends who.
Speak a little louder. I'm having a hard time hearing.
I'm trying to connect all these to this eternal literature, the Vedas. Is there a way that all these, the use of these hallucinogens and all these, drugs, that how is there a way that it connects to the writings that are there in the Vedas, or is there?
Say it again. What's the question again? Is there a way that you can use drugs?
No. That's not my point. I think Srila Prabhupada quite put it clearly that the modes in terms of the mode of nature where the drugs are. But is there a way? Is there like a reference that we can use to make sense of how the hallucinogens make people, God conscious?
It doesn't make people God conscious. Practicing sadhana bhakti, serving the spiritual master, you receive Krishna's mercy, you see the Guru's mercy, you become Krishna conscious. It's a gradual process. A drug experience is a temporary experience that may open up some awareness that allows you to perceive things differently. That's all. It doesn't create God consciousness. It may, as we're discussing, bring about what the hippies were experiencing, a sense of unity and love. They were looking for that. But it was naive, it was foolish, it was utopian, and it soon degenerated into this horrible scene there. Summer of love became the summer of hell shortly after. They don't talk about that. But it was that summer of love that was what gave Prabhupada the needed explosion for the Hare Krishna movement. That's my point. You're going to get me in trouble if I start talking about, some of these controversies. It even goes on in some sectors of the movement, devotees taking ayahuasca and different things to help them purge their psychological problems and things like that. I don't want to get into that. That's, as Prabhupada said, your God consciousness is already there. You don't need anything. You just chant Hare Krishna. You practice Krishna consciousness. We don't need to rely on anything outside of that. Yeah, go ahead. What? You're second. Go ahead.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class, Prabhu. I was wondering, in today's society, we see a lot of fashion, there's a lot of fashion about being hippie, like wearing hippie clothing, crystals, and all these. So people are, like in Camden Town, you go to Camden Town, and everyone looks very.
Yeah, it's
hipster.
kind of a neo-hippie, thing. They're trying to experience something that happened over 50 years ago. And sure, they want freedom. They want to. Ultimately, they don't want any discipline. See, this is the point. The hippie thing was like, you don't trust anyone. You don't follow anyone. You follow your own instincts. If it feels good, do it, man. That was the hippie ethos. So yes, that's just common hedonism. And yeah, so there are kind of like neo-hippies in Camden, artist types, whatever. And yeah, maybe with the right exposure to Krishna consciousness, They can start reading Prabhupada's books, come to the temple, chant, and actually become influenced to some level or another and apply themselves to Krishna consciousness. But my point is, those days where Prabhupada was so quickly successful, can never be replicated. That was Krishna's arrangement. It was never be repeated. But that summer of love was the birth and explosion of the Hare Krishna movement, going for the next 10,000 years. So we have to see it that way. Yeah, you're next, then you. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the class. I'm just curious to know, like you said that this Hare Krishna explosion won't repeat again. But
Not like that. Not like what happened with Prabhupada.
yeah.
I mean, we're preaching, but you have to understand what Prabhupada accomplished in 11 short years. It was unprecedented. Just like that migration of people all over America to San Francisco, that was unprecedented. 100,000 young people coming to the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood of San Francisco, that was unprecedented. Prabhupada took full advantage, understanding Krishna is doing this so that, because I don't have much time, we're going to explode. Boom, and it did. That's my point.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. Yeah, and then you. Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment from medical science point of view that the hallucinogens, if you take them for a longer time, then you end up developing psychosis, dementia, and stuff like that.
Yes, it was
And
dangerous, of course.
also, these substances, they induce a particular part of the brain, and that makes you feel something euphoric. But they don't have longer lasting effect compared to Krishna consciousness.
So you're speaking as a doctor. You've read some of the studies on this, or interesting. Of course, the devotees had that poster, "Stay high forever, never come down," because that's the whole point of these artificial stimuli. It's you can never determine what's going to happen. Yeah, sometimes you felt euphoria, sometimes what they call bad trips, anxiety, paranoia, and crazy things would happen. But there is research I know being done looking into certain kinds, maybe not LSD, but maybe like mushrooms and things, for people with post-traumatic stress syndrome. They're finding actually for some of these people it does help under certain medical parameters.
Once someone is very acutely ill,
Yeah.
there are licensed medications to use it. But that is only to buy some time while the counseling and other stuff start to work. But they're not for long-term treatment.
Yeah. Long-term treatment, chant Hare Krishna. Okay, Prabhu.
Just a small comment. I think I can't take I cannot take anything away from Srila Prabhupada's achievements in such a short space of time, and obviously the bringing Krishna consciousness, bringing Sanatana Dharma to the West. I can't take anything away from that. However, I think also it's nice to look forward, and I do hope that in the future we can have more explosions. Just a small sort of reflection. You mentioned that 100,000 people met in this location. Actually,
Basically a small neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Unprepared to handle
things
it.
have changed. We have
Yeah.
the internet now. You can gather much more than 100,000 people. We just maybe need to use the right technologies. Hare Krishna.
Of course, and many devotees are using technology for preaching purposes. I'm just talking about, what was happening then was a social, cultural, community experience that you can't really repeat.
But you can. I mean, if you can gather 100,000 people, is actually a small number, isn't it? If you can gather, I mean,
That's a lot of people.
Generation Y, Generation Z. I mean, what You know, how are they meeting?
I mean,
they're not meeting in parks and things like that. They're meeting on the internet, aren't they? So I'm just saying things have changed. All glories to the boomer generation. However, we need to look forward and, you know.
Look, meeting on the internet is fine. Zoom is fine. But the real thing is when you're actually there experiencing, you know, interpersonal dealings. That's,
okay, boomer.
That's so powerful. And that's what Prabhupada, of course, Prabhupada is Prabhupada. Prabhupada was empowered. His preaching, his attractiveness, he endeared his disciples to serve him, work hard, and he was always so grateful that, oh, you're doing all this service for me. I'm indebted to you because you're doing all this for me, spreading Krishna consciousness, distributing books. And so that was Prabhupada's empowerment. But the point is, in that short amount of time, it's just, you can't fathom, you know, the intensity. And, okay, we've been listening to Prabhupada disciples. I'm a disciple of Prabhupada. I have the good fortune to have spent 4.5 years of my life early on serving Prabhupada when he was on the planet. Okay. Essentially, we're all Prabhupada disciples, not like in a Ritvik sense, but Prabhupada is our Siksha Guru. We're all here because of Prabhupada. Okay. And as much as we tune into that, we can be successful. So I say, yes, Prabhupada disciple. It doesn't mean much because there's lots of Prabhupada disciples that are in Maya, basically, not practicing or deviant or whatever. But the difference is, I always tell the devotees, yes, you're also a Prabhupada disciple. You can read Prabhupada's books. You can associate with Prabhupada, get inspiration from Prabhupada. But the only difference is I have 4.5 years of memories that you don't have, of what it was like to serve Prabhupada when he was with us. And there was a certain intensity the devotees, Prabhupada disciples talk about, a certain energy, a certain urgency that you don't see in the Hare Krishna movement as it was then. There was also a kind of utopian feeling. Yes, the Hare Krishna movement's going to take over in 10 years. We're going to, you know, become politicians and, you know, lawyers and be in important positions. Well, that didn't happen. When Prabhupada left, things changed quite rapidly. But the point is, we can all be in touch with Prabhupada. That's what this Prabhupada festival is helping us come into our awareness. Not that, oh, I'm a Prabhupada disciple, I'm somehow or other uniquely qualified to be in touch with Prabhupada. I can be in Maya too, depending on what nature of my relationship with Prabhupada is. Yeah. Oh, I'm. Look, my greatest joy is to be here in London, and whether it's Soho or here at the Manor, there's so many incredibly powerful, talented, younger, second generation, third generation devotees, that the Hare Krishna movement is in good hands. I know that. And that gives me great satisfaction, knowing that. It's not, you know, I mean, hopefully there's some wisdom in old age, but, you know, sometimes there's also dementia. So it's the younger generation that really carries that enthusiasm. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. No, I'm sorry. I'm ignoring the ladies over here. Yeah. No, yeah. No, wait for the microphone.
I know because I joined in the 70s in Canada, and what you're saying makes huge sense, and it is a moment in time that will never be repeated.
Yeah.
Because it started the movement, it got it going, but then there's also lots of moments to look forward to. There's so many moments that have happened since then, different moments. So it's not like we're not going to have more explosions, they're just going to be different, because Srila Prabhupada came and started the movement. Because of that very historical context, it makes so much sense. But that's not saying there won't be huge explosions in the future. So it's like, it's just historical, isn't it?
We should all feel optimistic.
Yes.
Perhaps, Rishi Sunak, in a couple of years, will become prime minister, and things will change in ways we can't imagine. Perhaps Tulsi Gabbard in America also can be put into positions of power, and things can change quite rapidly. So we should all feel, not that everything's hinging on these two individuals, but as things are changing, just, okay, there's the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Big change. It's a big change. So how's that going to affect the devotees? We have to be very sensitive and open to that. Yes, Prema Bhakti, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. It was a wonderful class. I realized so many things from all your realizations and
Speak louder, please.
all the knowledge that you have from His Divine Grace. I like to say the seed was planted then, so things will happen. The seed was planted by His Divine Grace, and that's the center of. If you want to improve your spiritual life, you want to do spiritual activities, then Srila Prabhupada is the main. He planted the seed, didn't he? For this, the Hare Krishna explosion.
You have to speak louder. I'm really having a hard time hearing what you're saying. Say it again.
I'm saying that Srila Prabhupada has planted the seed
Yes.
of this whole
Planting the
Krishna
seed,
explosion.
yeah.
So the center is His Divine Grace. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. My point in today's class is simply that even over 50 years later, we're feeling the fallout, if you want to put it that way. It's not nuclear fallout. It's the fallout of the summer of love and Prabhupada's mercy that spread all over the world. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We all have to feel that connection and be proud that this movement had such energetic, revolutionary energy, and that Prabhupada was at the forefront, like the general leading his army of hippie monkeys. Just as Ramchandra, sometimes the analogy is given, just as Ramchandra had his army of monkeys, Prabhupada had his army of hippies. Yes, you must say again.
Prabhuji, you mentioned about Allen Ginsberg.
Yes.
How he helped Srila Prabhupada, if you can mention a few instances, how he was helping, you mentioned mantra or that. So what personality he was and how he helped?
Well, these things are explained in these books by Shyama-Sundar and others, memoirs. Allen Ginsberg was part of a San Francisco culture from the 50s and 60s called the Beat Generation, the Beat poets. So he's one of these Beat poets. But then he saw what was happening. The Beat generation was morphing into the hippie generation, moving out of North Beach, San Francisco, into Haight-Ashbury, and he was just part of that. And he recognized Prabhupada was part of that, and very important part of this new cultural phenomenon that was happening. So first in New York, and then San Francisco. Allen Ginsberg, and then also they had the the talk. What was it, 1969 or 70, in what was it? Ginsberg and Prabhupada talked together in Ohio. Where was Cincinnati? I can't remember. Anyway, the point is, yes, again, this is part of Krishna's arrangement. I mean, Allen Ginsberg was not exactly a devotee of Krishna, but by his influence, the hippies looked up to him as an elder mentor of sorts. And if he says chant Hare Krishna, okay, we'll chant Hare Krishna. Why? Allen Ginsberg said to do it. Yeah. Go ahead. It's getting late. Is it okay? It's Saturday. I hope I'm not violating the manner of rules. I'm a rebel at heart anyway, so what can I do? Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your class. In one of the classes, I heard Caitanya Sharan Prabhu say that Prabhupada said to the hippies, you have already done Sarvadharma Parityajya, you have left your family.
Do you have the microphone? Give her the microphone, please. Yeah, it's easier.
Prabhupada said to the hippies that you have done Sarvadharma Parityajya. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, yeah. Thank you for your class very much. In one of the classes, I heard that Srila Prabhupada said to the hippies that you have done Sarvadharma Parityajya. You've already left your families, you've left everything, and now you have to do Ma Mekam Sharanam Vraja. You just surrender unto me. to Krishna, and that's what the hippie culture and how Prabhupada turned them into devotees. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yes, I also want to add to that, yes, but back in those days of the Hare Krishna movement sometimes too, yes, surrender was there, but sometimes the surrender was done in artificial and immature ways, where a devotee dropped out of school or being able to have a career or something later on, they joined the ashram, and then later on when they needed to sustain a family, they couldn't because they dropped out of school. So we learned a lot from some immature sense of surrender also. Nowadays, if someone's studying, has a career orientation, okay, good. Practice Krishna consciousness too, though. Back in those days, it was like either you're in or you're out. So that was immaturity on our part. Yeah, I guess no one's telling me to leave.
Prabhuji, I fully I can relate to the part that you said that there was a sense of utopia and urgency in those early days. I've been recently seeing videos and reading Leelamrita, so I realized it was like, I heard somewhere there was this evangelistic zeal, which is probably less there nowadays. It's probably here in London, but we don't see it all over. So my question is, why is it now that it is not there? And as new devotees, as a different generation of devotees, what we can do to probably get it back? Of course, we are not as sincere as the initial disciple, but how we can contribute and why that zeal is not there now.
Okay, good question, thank you. But I'll answer it very simply. If we're in touch with Prabhupada, reading Prabhupada's books, following the practices of Krishna consciousness, we will develop a sense of urgency. It's not like that sense of urgency was there and now. You can say to the degree that we're not actually understanding Prabhupada, feeling Prabhupada's presence in our life, feeling Prabhupada's inspiration to preach, to practice, to go deeper in our practices, to go into that ocean of divine love. Ocean. I love this book. The ocean of love. So how big is an ocean? It's pretty big. How deep do you want to go? Well, it's up to you. How far out do you want to go? It's up to you. So it's all up to us on an individual level. How much do we want to take shelter of Prabhupada, associate with Prabhupada? This is part of what this Prabhupada festival is about. To let us all know that Prabhupada is not dead and gone. Prabhupada is available. But are we taking advantage of that availability? Back in the day, we used to have these little cassette tapes, right, of Prabhupada's lectures. I remember working in the kitchen, I'd play the same cassette tape, 30, 40, 50 times. Prabhupada lecture. Those cassette tapes are so rare and so valuable, and we were looking for new ones all the time. Nowadays, just go on the internet. ISKCON Desire Tree, you got all of Prabhupada's lectures available, but who's taking advantage? So that's my point. This is hopefully with these next 2 days, we'll all become inspired more to take advantage of Prabhupada's association. They're there in his tapes, they're there in his books, he's there. And just as when Prabhupada got on the Jaladut, he felt the presence of his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta. He was there with him. So this is look, my two godbrothers came in, Chaturbhuj and Karanadakshay Vishnu. These are also disciples of Prabhupada. But we're not the only ones that can take advantage of Prabhupada's association. This is meant for everyone. This is what if we're not thinking that we're doing that in the Hare Krishna movement, we're missing out. Yes, you may have your guru, you may be aspiring for a guru. All these things are good, Siksha gurus. Ultimately, Prabhupada is everyone's Siksha guru, everyone's guru. Not guru like Ritvik, that's the problem, but Siksha guru. And we have to appreciate that. It's getting late. No one's chasing me out yet. Did you want to say anything, or did he wants to say? Get the.
I think the previous question was very important because
Is it on?
Hare Krishna. I think the previous question is very important because it goes to the question of potency. There's tens of thousands of devotees now, and they're doing wonderful service. But in Srila Prabhupada's time, the family was small, and the potency, I think, was just so amazing. And with people like yourself and such-minded devotees, that potency which Mataji was referring to will be reinvigorated, and it's going to be wonderful. As Lord Chaitanya said, 10,000 years of Krishna consciousness.
Yes, but we shouldn't think it's going to happen automatically. We really have to work hard to make it happen. You know, yeah, 10 million people in the city of London. How many people are chanting or practicing Krishna consciousness? Very, very small percentage. Hmm? Oh yeah, of course. Look, I mean, these things are going on. I know. I've been participating at the Soho Temple. It's amazing. The Harinam, the book distribution. It's energetic. It's fantastic. People get involved. But I'm just saying, we have so much work to do. That's all. London's a big town. How many people are not understanding what we are beginning to understand in terms of Krishna consciousness? Go ahead.
Sometimes when I hear all these incredible stories about Prabhupada and his early disciples and all this excitement and love, I feel some envy. Why is it not me experiencing this? And how should I deal with this feeling of envy? Why is it not me who's so lucky to have all these experiences? How to become free from my envy?
How to become free from envy?
Yeah, when I hear about Prabhupada and his early disciples, I think, why is it
Well,
not me?
just like the answer was also there in the verse that I read, that Krishna reciprocates with his devotee and with the devotee of the devotee, and this is also our mentality. If we're not understanding that, yes, we're developing a desire to become Vaishnavas and serve Krishna, right? Serve Radha and Krishna, Radha Gokulananda, Sitaram, Lakshmana. Okay, that should be our focus, right? They're the deities. But even more important is to serve the devotees who are serving the deities. That will stop any envy or any problems.
I hear all these amazing stories. I feel I have such a boring life. I think.
So
Who am I? Why am I not?
there's many adventures in Krishna consciousness that you're just awaiting to be experienced, yes. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I am adventure. So, yeah, you don't think that your life is boring. Associate with the devotees. Believe me, who knows what's going to happen. How long have you been around the devotees? Okay, so. The more you apply yourself, the more you'll understand and become joyfully engaged in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. That's all. Okay. Anyway, it's getting late, and someone's going to get angry that I'm going on too much. So thank you all very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. I know all this prasada. I can't. I mean, I'll have to distribute it. Let me see what it is. I know this is your standard thing, the prasada. So this is like from last night's offering? Okay. And people are going to have prasadam. What's the program? People are going to have prasadam now? Oh, it's a fast day because of that. Then what am I going to do with this? It's a fast day. Yeah, but I can't carry it around with me unless it's like in some kind of a container. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a fast day. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare